let's talk about January 7th, 2026. A massive federal immigration raid was happening in Minneapolis. But by 9:37 in the morning, that whole operation became the center of a national firestorm. We're going to break down what happened that day. A day that kicked off with an enforcement action, but ended with a nation in protest. Wow. I mean, that is just an incredibly blunt statement to hear from a city's mayor, right? It cuts right to the absolute heart of this story, where a single event, caught on video, immediately spun off into two completely different realities. So, to really get what happened on that one street corner, you've got to understand the vibe in the entire city. This wasn't some random encounter. This was the breaking point after weeks and weeks of tension. They called it Operation Metro Surge. And just try to picture the scale here. The Department of Homeland Security sent 2,000 agents into the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. They described it as the largest operation of its kind ever. The whole city was just on edge. So you really have to remember, this was not a normal day for the people living there. For weeks, this intense federal presence felt, to them, like a siege. And this quote from an eyewitness, man, it just perfectly captures that feeling of a community under a ton of pressure. That's the backdrop for everything that was about to go down. So let's talk about the woman at the center of all this. The official narrative would later paint a very specific picture of her. But if you talk to her family, her friends, they tell you about someone very, very different. So here's what we know. Renee Good was 37, a U.S. citizen. She was an award-winning poet, a mom to 3 kids who had literally just dropped her youngest son off at school moments before this happened. And according to her ex-husband, she wasn't an activist. He said he'd never even known her to go to a protest. And these words from her wife, Rebecca, they really paint a picture of the life they were trying to build. In fact, they had just moved to Minneapolis from Kansas City the year before because they were looking for a community that reflected those exact values. Okay, so let's get to the incident itself. The whole thing unfolded in just a couple of minutes on Portland Avenue, but it was captured on multiple cell phone and surveillance videos, and that right there is exactly why this whole thing blew up so contentious so fast. Okay, now look at these timestamps. This is what's so wild. At 9:37 and 8 seconds, you have agents approaching her car, yelling commands. Just 5 seconds later, look at that last entry. 3 shots are fired. 5 seconds. That's how fast this went from shouting to fatal shots. The speed is just staggering. Now, the agent who fired those shots, Jonathan Ross, he was a highly experienced officer. We're talking a firearms instructor, an active shooter instructor, a member of a SWAT team. But there's another really critical piece of context here. Just 6 months earlier, he had been seriously injured after being dragged by a vehicle during a different traffic stop. And right here, this is where one event, seen by millions, just fractures into 2 completely irreconcilable narratives. The moments captured on that video were immediately seen in 2 starkly, diametrically opposite ways. So on one side, you have the official narrative from the president and the Department of Homeland Security. They painted Good as a domestic terrorist who viciously ran over an agent. They said the agent fired in self-defense, fearing for his life. But then you have the other side. Eyewitnesses, video analysis from news organizations, all directly contradicting that, saying she posed no threat, was just trying to leave, and that the agent wasn't actually struck by the car. And get this detail is just fascinating. It perfectly illustrates this conflict. Reporters from the New York Times actually played the slow-motion video for President Trump in the Oval Office. And they told him, to his face, that from this angle, it just didn't appear to show an officer being run over. This really shows that the gap between the official story and the visual evidence was there from the absolute beginning. Yeah, this shooting was not going to stay a Minneapolis story for long. No way. Fueled by those viral videos and those deeply conflicting narratives, the fallout was immediate, it was massive, and it spread like wildfire across the entire country. The public response was just overwhelming. A GoFundMe set up for Renee Good's wife and 3 children raised over $1.5 million before the family finally closed it down. That's a staggering sign of the immense public sympathy for them. And you have to remember the geography here. This all happened about a mile from where George Floyd was murdered in 2020. Protests erupted at the scene almost immediately, and they grew fast. Soon you had vigils and demonstrations demanding justice for Renee Good being held in cities all across America. The official fallout was just as swift and just as furious. Citing safety concerns, Minneapolis public schools were shut down. The state's governor condemned the entire federal operation as, quote, governance designed to generate fear. And the mayor of Minneapolis, well, he had that explosive message for ICE you saw earlier. But the move that sparked the most outrage? That was when the FBI took sole control of the whole investigation, effectively shutting out state and local authorities from their own city's case. And that move, well, it prompted an immediate and furious response. The head of the Democratic National Committee, Ken Martin, he did not mince words. He called the federal takeover a fucking cover-up and accused the administration of creating a system where federal agents get to police themselves after someone is murdered. So, in the end, the killing of Renee Good remains this explosive flashpoint. It was a moment that forced a confrontation between local and federal power, and between an official story and video evidence seen by millions. And it leaves us with a lingering and really difficult question. In an age where everything is recorded, what happens to public trust when what we are told happened and what we can see with our own eyes are two completely different things?